In the decade following the Second World War, a small but persistent body of popular literature in the United States and parts of Western Europe advanced what later commentators would call the Venusians conspiracy theory, the claim that intelligences originating on the planet Venus were not merely visiting Earth, but exerting covert influence over human affairs. Though never a coherent doctrine with a single text or leadership, the theory circulated through overlapping communities, contactee circles, UFO clubs, occult periodicals, and certain strands of anti-communist and anti-atomic activism, where it acquired a vocabulary of infiltration, manipulation, and hidden governance consistent with broader Cold War anxieties. Belief in Venus as a plausible abode for life did not emerge from conspiracy thinking alone. Prior to the space age, Venus's surface conditions were uncertain to the public, and popular science frequently treated the planet as a potential Earth-like world obscured by cloud cover. This ambiguity proved fertile terrain for imaginative speculation. In the late 1940s and 1950s, reports of flying saucers entered mass media, and a parallel genre of contact narratives, first-person accounts of meetings with extraterrestrial beings, gained a readership. Within this milieu, Venus occupied a privileged place as a nearby, familiar-sounding origin point that could be invoked without the technical distance of far-off stars. The conspiracy theory, in its most developed form, asserted four propositions. First, that Venus hosted an advanced civilization, often described in terms that echoed human political ideals: orderly, rational, and technologically superior. Second, that Venusians possessed craft capable of traversing interplanetary space and operating in Earth's atmosphere with impunity. Third, that they maintained an ongoing program of intervention, sometimes framed as benevolent guidance, sometimes as covert control. Fourth, that governments and scientific institutions either concealed this presence or were themselves compromised by it. Unlike later UFO conspiracies that emphasized abduction, biological experimentation, or militarized secrecy, the 1950s Venusian narrative was frequently couched in the language of moral instruction and geopolitical warning. Many adherents held that Venusians sought to avert nuclear catastrophe, curb militarism, and shepherd humanity toward a unified global order. The conspiracy dimension entered when this guiding role was interpreted not as open diplomacy, but as hidden management. A belief that policy decisions, scientific breakthroughs, and public fears were being subtly shaped to produce desired outcomes. The most influential conduits were not academic institutions but media ecosystems that blurred entertainment, testimony, and spiritual instruction. Contactee authors, lecturers, and radio guests described encounters with tall, calm emissaries, often portrayed as physically attractive and ethically elevated, who purportedly delivered warnings about atomic testing, environmental degradation, and the perils of authoritarian politics. Small presses, pamphlets, and lecture circuits allowed such stories to circulate nationally without rigorous verification. UFO organizations and newsletters repeated these claims, sometimes embellishing them with allegations of official suppression, confiscated photographs, intimidated witnesses, and secret committees tasked with managing the truth. In some variants, Venusians were said to have penetrated the upper tiers of government, either by impersonation or by recruiting human collaborators. More commonly, however, the theory suggested a subtler form of influence: selective revelation to chosen individuals, the planting of ideas, or the steering of public sentiment through staged sightings. The result was a worldview in which the visible turbulence of the Cold War concealed an invisible diplomacy conducted above and beyond nations. The Venusian conspiracy theory drew strength from tensions characteristic of the early atomic era. The unprecedented power of nuclear weapons, the secrecy of defense establishments, and the perceived fragility of social order encouraged the sense that crucial decisions were being made outside democratic scrutiny. Conspiracy frameworks typically thrive where official information is scarce and technological change is rapid. The 1950s offered both. To some believers, Venusians functioned as a rational explanation for phenomena that seemed to outpace conventional politics, an unseen hand moderating catastrophe, or alternately, manipulating it. Notably, Venusian narratives could serve opposing ideological purposes. To an audience oriented toward spiritual renewal or pacifism, Venusians were guardians urging moral reform. To more suspicious listeners, the same figures could be recast as interlopers undermining sovereignty, engineering mass psychology, or preparing a gradual takeover under the guise of peace. The flexibility of the Venusian motif, salvific or subversive, helped sustain it across diverse subcultures. As planetary science advanced in the late 1950s and 1960s, Venus increasingly appeared inhospitable to human-like life, weakening the plausibility of a nearby Venusian civilization for many casual adherents. At the same time, UFO conspiracy narratives evolved toward more distant, less falsifiable origins, interdimensional hypotheses, secret bases, and extraterrestrials from remote star systems. Yet the 1950s Venusian conspiracy theory remains historically significant as an early example of modern UFO belief, merging with the distinctive logic of conspiracy, a conviction that extraordinary events are not merely unexplained, but deliberately managed by hidden actors operating behind official reality. In retrospect, the Venusian theory can be read less as an empirical claim about a neighboring planet than as a cultural artifact of its era, an attempt to impose order on a world suddenly defined by invisible technologies, institutional secrecy, and existential risk. Its Venusians, whether imagined as protectors or infiltrators, mirrored the decades' preoccupation with the unseen forces presumed to shape history.